it took a couple of years for me to fully understand why Judah picked me. And what they explained to me is that they are a group of 350,000 angels. Basically, they are a soul family, separated out from source as a collective, and that these 350 angels, as they originally described them to me, are 350,000 incarnations from that soul, from this soul, and and that I am one of those. So Sakhmet of Egypt was one of those. Judah of the Bible was one of those. Jesus was one of those. So there are 350,000 different incarnations from this angelic group.
Welcome in. I'm Kimberly. I'm so glad you're here today. I'm very, very excited about our guest. It's someone that I just have such a heart for and has such a sweet, wonderful story. I think you're going to love her. If you're enjoying this content, make sure you click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And if you'd like to keep track of what's going on around the planet, but feeling a bit overwhelmed, you might want to sign up for our Friday morning email newsletter. It comes out every Friday morning. We try to include what we feel they're the important events that have happened around the world and information that we think is good to share. It's super easy to sign up. The link is in the description box down below. Super free, super fun, super informative. I think you're going to love it. Now, today's guest is someone that I have just enjoyed getting to know their story so much. We are joined today by channeler Anjie Hipple. Anjie, welcome in.
Hi, Kimberly. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, I'm so excited. And when you say us, it is us because your life certainly is a team effort right now with
Yeah,
your channeling. But before we get started and introduce the guests to Judah, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story? Because I don't think you said I want to be a channeler when I grow up.
No, I didn't. Well, I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian home, and also raised my children in a fundamentalist Christian home. I kind of made a big leap into the unknown against my Baptist pastor's father's wishes and married a Pentecostal charismatic. And we enjoyed the company and the love and the friendship and family of our church friends over the years and raising our kids. And I thought, that Christianity and a relationship with Jesus was the way for me. I was very, very much conditioned mentally, environmentally, in every way by not just my parents, but my community and church and so on, to be this good, loving, sweet Christian mom that never rocked the boat and lived by the words of Jesus.
And I'll tell you what, you haven't lost the sweet loving. That's still there. So maybe the other title might have shifted a bit.
Well, my husband will tell you I have some devil horns too from
Oh,
time to time for sure. But yeah, so that was my whole world, till my mid 40s. And when my awakening began, as we kind of throw that term around, I know it means a lot of different things to different people, but to simplify, when my awakening began about 7 or 8 years ago, I was teaching in a beautiful, sweet, private Christian school, a very loving and comfortable place for me, teaching second grade. I had 3 kids, nearly grown. I had one that had already moved out and started her own family, and I had 2 teenagers at home. I'd been married 27 years at that point. I loved to lead worship at my church and speak and sing at different women's conferences all over. And I was kind of like the Hillsong girl, if that means anything to some of your listeners. Very much that was my world. And my father died suddenly of a heart attack, and I was his only daughter. And he left me with a car dealership as an inheritance, which was supporting my mom and several other families. My daughter and grandchildren were part of that. And the gentleman that he had worked with for decades began stealing from us even before my dad was buried in the ground. So it took me a quick minute or two to have my eyes open to that. So it's dealing with my father's death, with embezzlement, all the sadness and loss. Also, of course, my whole life 2 hours away of teaching and raising kids and all of that. And so my life just started unraveling with a series of unfortunate events, which happens to a lot of people that undergo an awakening process. And then to boot, on top of all that, my marriage started coming apart and I ended up divorced. And so there's a lot going on. But in this whole process, there was also this kind of feeling of freedom coming to me. There was, winds of change. And I was starting to question a lot of things that weren't working, just rethinking everything in my life. And so soon after my separation, I met a beautiful gentleman who became my spiritual partner. And he was a big instrumental part to all of my awakening, challenging my thinking, challenging why I was doing certain things and behaving in certain ways. And so I was full on in a real intense and thorough deconstruction.
Boy, that's certain. I have heard that so often that people, everything in their life just falls apart and they're standing around looking at just rubble of what used to be. And then this incredible transformation takes place.
Sure, sure. And that common phrase we hear, what the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly. And so there is when people talk about the dark night of the soul, which I like to call the dark night of the ego, it's a
Mhm.
real thing. I think the universe, or maybe it's the choice of our own soul, sets us up sometimes for an escape hatch or a happening or a moment in time or a season of time in which we kind of are awakened to what's not working and begin questioning things and dying to what's not really us, letting that go, and then remembering the butterfly that we are, the creation that we are. And so, I went through about 6 years of this really ego stripping and rethinking all of my paradigms and perspectives. And towards the end of that time, I contracted COVID. Of course, we all went through some trauma around that. And another common thread, for awakenings, a lot of times is a near-death experience. A lot of times wakes people up to supernatural gifts and transformation. Sometimes it's trauma. In the psychology world, they call that a trauma high or trauma bonds. And many people encounter angels and divinity through these kind of dire circumstances. So towards the end of this, COVID happened. I got really sick. I had long COVID, and really could only sit in a chair for a couple of years. My body just quit functioning altogether. So I was no longer even able to fulfill my ego roles, my identifiers, like being a wife, being a mom, being a grandma, having my own business. I couldn't function in any of those roles anymore. So it's just kind of stripped down to what is, what's left after all that's peeled back? Who am I really? And begin to just travel inward even more deeply through meditation, through reading the books of enlightened masters, listening to teachings and podcasts just like this one. And towards the end of 2 years of that, really, I had nearly died twice, maybe a third time as well. And I didn't have any promise that I was going to get well. So I was having to accept or allow that this might not be my new normal. And about that time, one evening, my grandbaby, my third, was getting ready to be born. And another letting go. I knew I couldn't be there for the birth. I was really distressed about that and heartbroken. And I was just letting it go. Just thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Whatever, whoever's out there, whoever you are, I'm not even sure what your name is, or if you have a name, or if you're a person, or a she or a he. I had just kind of let go of all those things to be a big question mark in my life. I said, whoever, whatever you are that's in charge of all of this, I let this go. And that evening I was sitting on the couch with my new partner, which was very common for us, and we were watching a really enlightened channeler. And when I had first started dating him, I thought channeling was some kind of voodoo or witchcraft or weird, strange thing. And he was an acupuncturist as well, which was already on my list of, do not do from my Christian upbringing.
Borderline things.
Yeah. I mean, I only went to acupuncture because it was a last resort and I had tried everything else. But we were sitting there watching a beautiful channeler, and I had grown to love channelers over time of being with him because their messages were so applicable and helpful and resonant for me. And I heard wisdom through them that actually worked on a practical level for my life. So that night, as we were listening, he turned and looked at me and he said, "You could do that." And I thought, okay, all my no's had kind of dissipated at that point. I said, all right. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but I was willing at that point. So that night, I began channeling Judah, and it
That
was,
night?
yeah, yes.
That's so it must have been, everything must have just been a setup for that to happen. Your partner to say it, he was nudged to say it, that you were nudged, the whole thing.
Yeah, the way it began was that night when I went to bed. I had this, really bizarre and profound mystical experience where I felt my grandbaby as if he was in my womb, and coincidentally, not coincidentally, he was born 2 days later. But I felt him in my womb. I felt those Braxton Hicks contractions. I felt his head pushing down on my pelvic floor, all the things that you experience near labor as a woman having a baby. And I could sense his little spirit. I knew why he was coming to the earth. I knew it was a boy. I knew why he was coming during this particular season of our history and time. And I was just aware of all of this. So when I got up the next morning, I typed all of that up. I shared it with my new partner when he got home. We said, well, okay, what do we do next? Well, let's just sit down and meditate, which is kind of a normal, usual thing for us to do. And just in moments, this big, huge voice came barreling out, and I could feel, all this pulling and energy around my mouth. I felt as if a drill bit was going through my third eye area. Just all these kind of physical openings and phenomenon. So, as far as I know, that was the first time that my third eye ever opened up. And so we've just kind of been in a love relationship with Judah ever since then, and it's been delightful. It's been
Wow,
completely life-changing, and I was instantly healed from that moment forward.
that's amazing.
A few hours later, I realized, oh wow,
I feel
I
great.
I feel great.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
think I'm healed.
Okay, I want to back up just a minute and kind of keep it
Sure.
personal to you before we bring
Yeah, absolutely.
Jonah in, Judy in. I keep messing that name up. Apologize for that. What happened with your relationships when this shift in your belief system came about?
Well, that's a great question. Well, Kimberly, the truth is I was a chicken and I just ducked out. So
Oh,
what I did was when my marriage came apart, I just sold my house. I found a different job across town. I ducked out of my church as quietly and unobtrusively as I could. I was so high profile, and I knew that, I guess in my heart of hearts, there was probably some guilt and shame, and I wasn't sure exactly what I was doing or what I was going through. But the bigger part of me, I didn't want to be unkind or unloving to my church family. And I didn't want to create any disturbance or strife or anything through what I was going through and through my leaving. And so I really ducked out very quietly and began a whole new life that was completely separate from everything I'd been involved in all of these decades in my community and teaching in my church and all of that. And so I don't know if I did exactly the right thing. I probably would do it the same way if I had to do over again, because I do think sometimes a clean break is helpful. It was probably a little harsh on me in an emotional sense. But I think I instinctively knew that the people that I was in relationship with were just like I had been all those years. They really didn't have space in their mind to consider that there might be another way or to question. I was raised in that really hard line. If you don't accept Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, you're going to hell and you're going to burn for eternity. And I remember even as a young mom, especially when my kids got to be teenagers and they did the usual things that teenagers do, and there were rebellions and different things. I remember feeling really afraid that my kids would reject Jesus and wind up going to hell. I mean, what
Yeah.
worse thing can you think about as a loving parent happening to your kids than that?
Yeah. It's such a fear statement. And I can
Mhm.
remember too, Angie, when I saw my first channeler, and it was Esther Hicks, you know,
Yeah.
and I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds so true to me. Or that
Hmm.
makes so much sense. There was just something all of a sudden so soothing, and it just clicked in and
Hmm.
felt right for me. So I think I can understand how you felt when you started down that road.
Yeah, and I went through periods of time where occasionally I'd be a little afraid that I was going to get burned at the stake by somebody.
Oh,
But
you did.
for the most part, everybody's been pretty receptive, and my kids and different people in my life. But I have two friends that are left from all of those many years in the Christian faith. And the other people couldn't make the journey with me. And instinctively knew that would happen, and I was okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, nice that you had those too. I've talked to friends who lost everybody. I mean, they
Hmm.
literally had to start over again. So,
Hmm.
and that can be a little tough. So you saved those two. So tell me, when the channeling started, how did you handle that personally? I mean, that's a huge shift as a human. We come onto this planet. It took me forever to figure out how to be a human and how to do this human stuff.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're moved into a completely different place to be and way to be in the world. How did that work for you personally?
Well, when it's so profound and so divine and so comforting, their presence of these angels, that you just, from a heart perspective, I just couldn't say no. It was so overwhelming and such a gift, right? And I immediately also understood how much of a treasure this was also for the earth to be able to share these messages. And I didn't feel like karmically I had the luxury of saying no to that.
Okay.
It
Okay.
just didn't feel like something that I could say no to.
Yeah. Was there a part of you that sort of had a sense that, oh, this is what I agreed to prior to incarnation? Like had sort of a familiarity with that decision or familiarity with this new path?
I'm not sure about that per se, but I will tell you that it took a couple of years for me to fully understand why Judah picked me. And what they explained to me is that they are a group of 350,000 angels. Basically, they are a soul family, separated out from source as a collective, and that these 350 angels, as they originally described them to me, are 350,000 incarnations from that soul, from this soul, and that I am one of those. So Sakhmet of Egypt was one of those. Judah of the Bible was one of those. Jesus was one of those. So there are 350,000 different incarnations from this angelic group. And Anjie Hipple is just one of the little ones of those. So when I channel them, it feels like being fully connected to my higher self. That's literally what's happening. I'm being fully plugged in my higher self. And we can't safely channel all of our higher self in our physical being, but we can channel a lot more than we think we can. And so when I channel them, it feels like coming home. It feels
Mhm.
comfortable. It feels safe. It feels like truth for me. I don't feel any misalignment with it at all. Now, sometimes when I come out of a channeling state and I get in my head, I can think, Judah, why did you say that? And you really put me on the line there. And I'm not so sure that I want to back up what you just said there. And, so I can go through a little of that sometimes. But Kimberly, as I go along, I help people every single week now begin channeling for the very first time. Many people who've never imagined that they could channel but have some little happy thought in there that maybe they'd like to one day if they're qualified. And I've found that I've yet to find anybody that couldn't help channel for the first time.
Yeah.
It's a natural, I think, inborn skill that we can access.
Yeah, I agree with you. And my opinion about that is that our culture, particularly Western culture, really suppresses all those skills and gifts that we come in that are part of our birthright, that are birthright. One thing I want to say about the collective, you said 250,000?
350,000.
That's a huge collective. A lot of collectives are like, 80 or 400 or something. That's a huge collective.
Yeah, and when you meet your higher self, which Judah is my higher self, when you meet them in that fashion, then they are able to introduce you to many of your past life selves and future life selves. Yeah.
So you clearly made the decision to do this prior to incarnation. And so here you are. How does it feel now for you? Like, do you feel like, oh, things have I'm just clicked in. This is exactly, I feel so at home doing this.
Yeah. I feel like finally I'm doing what I came to the earth to do.
Oh,
And I meet so many people that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are just beginning to open up to actually why they got here. And I think that that's probably a natural part of spiritual evolution and awakening. When we're young, we're busy having kids and living in a more natural sort of 3D reality, perhaps, and working and in the American dream and whatever. And then sometimes I think as we get in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, we kind of can then see the hollowness of it or the shallowness of it, or really have the opportunity to emotionally feel the emptiness of having achieved a lot of things or maybe having missed out on a lot of things. And we begin to wake up and really want to know why we're here.
yeah.
And yeah.
And I think even more so. So I kind of look at, the humans that are on the planet right now. I look at us as kind of the transition civilization. In other words, we're going from an old narrative, an old way of living into a new way of living. Some of us will be here for longer, clearly, than others, as far as that shift is helping Earth a mission for this collective. In other words, is this their focus right now to give as much information as possible to help us through this? Or are they doing a lot of other things too on other reality systems?
Yeah, no, I mean, they've described themselves as a fifth dimensional collective. And so I know that, in the kind of circles we run with, there can sometimes inadvertently be this little bit of competition. Well, I'm channeling a ninth dimensional collective. I'm channeling a 12th dimensional collective, and, all of this sort of thing. The way they've explained it to me, it's they can work on any dimension, but their passion is working in the fifth dimension because they are specifically geared to help humans become fifth dimensional in nature. In other words, to begin mastering their thought and emotional life in the 4D realm as they awaken and go all the way to the door of enlightenment and through the door of enlightenment to become a fifth dimensional being that is so fully self-realized, an ascended being or an enlightened being. So this is their passion and their specialty. This is what's more important to them than anything else.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, can we talk with Judah a little bit?
Sure, absolutely.
I have questions.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah. Judah, the question I have, or where I want to start, is we are transitioning from 3D to 5D. Why is this happening on Earth? This was, in my mind, always kind of the lower density, gritty, challenging, dualistic reality system. So that's shifting. Why the shift?
Well, we can tell you one of the reasons why Earth was chosen for this particular assignment is because Mother Earth, we are speaking of the physical entity, yes, who Mother Earth has an intelligence, a divine intelligence. She is evolving upwards and upwards and upwards in her vibrational capacity, and she is most certainly fifth dimensional in nature, yes? And so she provides the atmosphere and the vibration that is ideal for helping souls to evolve through this 3D, 4D into 5D. And in fact, those who are fifth dimensional in nature, who this number is increasing on the earth continually, some are experiencing moments or aspects of the self which are 5D. We would say, this is a little bunny trail here, but some of you having a third dimensional experience have aspects of your personality which are still very fourth dimensional, third dimensional, and other aspects which you are in which you are fifth dimensional or even perhaps beyond. And so Mother Earth is very supportive of this process. And that is one reason why the Earth has been chosen for this type of evolutionary process.
So I've heard it described that there's going to be a new Earth, but I've also heard it described that there's going to the Earth that we're on right now, or this reality system, is going to continue to exist. A new Earth is going to form. Is that how you see it, or can you explain for our human minds how this is going to work?
Well, I can explain that. And so each individual soul living on the earth today is living in their own version of reality and their own version of earth. This vessel already lives in the new earth, yes. Her experience of everything around her is of a higher dimensional aspects of the earth. For example, she experiences the banking system as being very enlightened and supportive of all of her dreams, magnetizations, and aspirations. Yes. And her money in the bank earns 22% and beyond. Now, there are others who are experiencing an earth in which the banking system is failing or failing them or being destroyed or unraveling and so on. And that is what they have created. And so to answer your question, what we will say is that every being is an infinite creator being. Every human being on the earth. Some are creating consciously, some are creating unconsciously. Some of those are vacillating in and out of states of consciousness and unconsciousness. And there are some who are conscious, who are saddled still to some degree by various subconscious beliefs. And with each removal or clearing of subconscious beliefs, those conscious ones can create infinitely more possibilities. For example, this vessel in just a few short years has grown from being paycheck to paycheck to now having more money than she can ever spend. And this is just one aspect, you see. There are areas of consciousness that in which each one can grow, areas such as your life's work and life's purpose, your relationships with your families, your romantic relationships, your relationship to the earth and the environment, and so on. And so anyone can, even in this moment, create a quantum jump from where you are to where you want to be in this new earth. And the earth that you are living in and experiencing, you are experiencing through the eyes of your perspective and the lens of your emotions, and you can at any time change that at will. And there are unlimited possibilities for this new earth. One of the ones that we share frequently through this vessel is about the dream for enlightenment. You see, in the earth plane, the timeline, the frequency band in which many of you operate, You think of enlightenment as being for only a select few. Yes, perhaps one that lives in a cave and meditates all day long, or perhaps one who is a best-selling author with millions of followers. Yes. But what we share through her, and this is her reality in the new earth she is creating, is that everyone can be enlightened. Absolutely everyone. And that she believes wholeheartedly, and we support her with our energy and passion, that she can facilitate many, many, countless numbers of people into a full realization of their enlightened self and their enlightened state. And so she dwells in a mentality of the new earth coming soon, very soon, in which all children will operate in high functioning psychic gifts full of love and wisdom, which will be expressed through these subsets of their psychic gifts. And they will be very in tuned and enlightened. Yes, and living in the new earth that you are also dreaming of.
So, are you saying that the humans that are being born onto Earth now have a higher frequency or a greater connection or a greater understanding, something different than, let's say, generations that were born 100 years ago?
Yes, we would say that the souls choosing to incarnate at this time, well, we would say there is a long line, so to speak. And a lot of buzz, and a desire to incarnate at this time. Yes. And so there are millions of Christ being born into the earth in humble circumstances, just as the Christ born in a manger. And these young ones are going to demonstrate extraordinary gifts from very young ages. And they will grow up with the kind of awareness that will not allow for the levels of conditioning. They will stay awake. They will stay aware. They will be discerning about when parents and others in the community and media and so on, educational systems are attempting to condition them, and they will not allow it. They will have what many may label as stubbornness, but it is a commitment within their souls to be divinely guided and to thwart and refuse any sort of bondage
Yeah,
to
or
their soul
manipulate.
and their soul's mission. Yes.
So, are you saying it sounds like they're going to be more sovereign? In other words, they're going to be believe more in their own independence and their own gifts and their own decisions about what to do with their lives. Is that on track?
Yes, that is correct. And being aligned from a soul perspective with their own sovereignty, they will refuse to be compliant.
Okay. I
And
would
this will
have,
be very inconvenient, we will say, for
I would
any
admit,
unenlightened ones who are attempting to influence them. This will be very inconvenient for them.
yes, I would imagine that's definitely different than what we've seen in the past. Here's my next question. So the kids that are coming in just a little bit more connected, a little bit more aware, a little bit more sovereign. What is going to happen to those that are already on Earth? The let's say there's 20-year-olds. How is their life going to change? And then 40-year-olds, and then 60-year-olds. How are we going to be able to adapt as humans to this new vibration? How is that going to play out?
Well, we would say that the vibration is rising so rapidly and so pervasively that you cannot really hold on to any ideas about how all of this transformation is happening. For the moment you grasp the truth of the reality of the moment, then it will already have shifted into a new and broader possibilities. And a lot of this is caused by the massive influx of enlightened information throughout the internet and through the algorithms. And so the consciousness of humanity is literally creating the algorithm. So the algorithm is the creation of the global consciousness, is it not? And so this has an enormous momentum that creates a vast acceleration. So even what we say to you now about the 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and 40-year-olds, and so on, may have the capacity for the fulfillment of that and beyond may be vastly different 2 or 3 months from now or next year. But we will say that these 20-year-olds have a boldness, a tremendous boldness. They are experimenting with their infinite creation gifts in magnificent ways. For example, many of them now say, we will tell a story that we heard just recently of a young woman who received a text from her boyfriend. And in the text, he broke up with her. And she read the text and she maintained her observer state. She did not get involved in her emotions about it. There was no emotional egoic reaction. She read the text and she said, as an infinite creator being, that never happened. This was not a denial, as a psychologist might infer. This was not her pushing it under the rug. This was her simply changing the timeline on which she was operating. She said, this never happened, and she let it go. Now, just within a very short period of the time, the boyfriend called her up, and he proceeded on relating with her and in the relationship as if it never happened. So young ones in their 20s are learning how to vastly accelerate their capacities as magicians and as infinite creator beings. Yes, they understand this quantum jumping. They understand how to rewrite reality by changing their perspective and watching their words and using their words. You see, all words are spells. Yes, this is why teachers use the word spelling. This is where the word spelling comes from, because eons ago, when this word spelling came to be a word, it was understood that when you write something, yes, it is casting a spell of sorts. When you speak it, when you write it, it is infinitely more powerful than when you only think it. Whatever you dwell on in the realm of thought becomes more and more powerful when you speak it, and then if you write it, it's even more powerful. And so these young ones are understanding that words are spells. And so everyone has a choice then. Will you be a good witch or a bad witch? Yes? Because we are all casting our spells continually, not just onto others, but onto ourselves. Now, in the 30s and 40s, it's a little more challenging. Yes, those in their 30s many times are aware of some of the conditioning that's causing them misery. They are understanding the fruitlessness of it, but they don't quite have the tools always to quickly and readily dismiss what they are experiencing. Now, in the 40s, 50s, and beyond, for those who have been in darker times, with much more shrouding of the divine seed within them by so many layers of ego and thought perceptions. For these, it is much more painful and difficult to come out from under and to be restored to their natural enlightened state. But it is absolutely possible. And for those who can do it, they can be way showers for the young.
Yeah. It sounds like humans are going to become much more skilled at manifesting the reality that they want to live in. Is it because of the higher frequencies hitting the planet? Is it because of universal knowledge that's coming onto the planet? What's the driving force behind that?
Well, we can tell you that awareness is part of that, but we will say this. Many of you want to manifest certain things, and you set the intention for that, and then you don't get what you want, and you think that the whole thing doesn't work, or that there's something wrong with you, that you're missing out on some piece of information that you need. And we will say that is not true. There are many, 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 many times that angels such as ourselves, through grace, through the grace of divinity, will suppress your manifestation, because you have to understand that if you want to operate in high levels of manifestation, you have to take the good with the bad. And so we will suppress this manifestation to some degree because we don't want you to harm yourselves. So we will give you an example of this. Just a few weeks ago, this vessel's mother died. And as she was getting ready for the funeral, and she was putting on her makeup, and she had her eyeliner in her hand, and she was beginning to put it on her eye, this black eyeliner, and she thought to herself, I shouldn't put this on, because as surely as I do, I will cry and my face will be a blackened mess. Yes. And before she even finished this thought, the entire container of the eyeliner broke loose. It broke, and a whole pot of black ink was dumped into her eye. And her eye, literally, the whole thing turned black. And so this is an example of how quickly you can manifest. So before she even finished the thought, my eyes are going to be a blackened mess, projecting onto the future, her eyes then were literally blackened. Yes? And so understand, sometimes you want to manifest and you get frustrated with yourself or the universe or pointing fingers. Many times this vessel gets messages, well, Judah, I asked you for this and you didn't come through, and so on. Well, sometimes we don't allow the full force of the power of your infinite creator ability because we don't want you to harm yourself or harm others.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think as humans, we ask for the ability to manifest without realizing that it can go either direction.
Yeah,
So,
that is right. You don't get to
yeah,
pick and choose. Yes, you
yeah,
don't get to only manifest the good without accepting responsibility for the hurt and harm that you cause to yourself and others. We are looking for those who are willing to take full responsibility for their creative powers. And we know this is a difficult to swallow, when to tell yourself the truth that the things that are very unpleasant or painful in your life, that you created it. We understand this is difficult to hear. So what we always say is, act as if you created it. Yes, act as if.
yeah. So fast. I love this topic. It's so fascinating to me. So as we move forward, humanity here on Earth, and you guys aren't on Earth, I am, and it's a little bumpy right now. There's just a lot going on. There's no consensus on any topic, where humans came from, what a good political system is, what a good financial system is, what good food is, how to run a society, let alone run a family. There's no consensus right now, or it doesn't seem to be. There's so much conflict. How can we best, as those of us who are aware that things are really shifting, what should we expect over the coming months? And how can we best move through it in a way that's as helpful to ourselves as possible?
Well, we will say, is particularly in these times of high drama and conflict, yes, that there are classic roles that the ego wants to typecast both you as listeners and all the people in your life and people in the political scene and the business world and so on. There are classic roles the ego wants to cast you in, and others. And those are victim, villain, and rescuer. And so understand that all three of these roles are ego roles. Yes. And so it is easy to see yourself as the victim of many things going on in the world stage, or others as the victim of many things going on, and to see certain ones, characters, as villains, and then to always see yourself as the hero or the rescuer, yes, or the lover, the loving one who wants to smooth out everyone's troubles. All three of these are ego roles. Understand, even the precious, most innocent babes who die in war and other heinous and dark situations, these beautiful souls have offered themselves up as living sacrifices for the evolution of humanity. Yes? And so no one is a victim No one, no one, no one is a victim. We understand this is very difficult to hear. And even as we share it, this vessel, we can hear her in the background saying, yes, Judah, but what about this one and that one? Well, one of the reasons we can use this vessel in particular to share such a message is because she has been what you would consider a true victim of violence, a true victim of life-threatening situations when she was vulnerable and innocent as a child. Yes. And so understand, though, that as you grow and as you surrender to all that is, and you act as if you created everything that you have encountered in your life and everything that is going on, then you can come into your true power and divinity. And so the way to make it through the next few months, the coming months, and everything that will happen is to refuse to play the role of victim, villain, or rescuer. To trust that angels and source are not asleep. They know exactly what is going on. There is a higher intelligence and a higher mind that engineers everything. And if you can trust in that, you don't need to know. You don't need to know and understand all these things. You can simply trust. And so refusing to be a part of us and them, good and bad, right and wrong, left and right, blue and red, rising above all of that, understanding we will speak directly here for a moment to Americans about the political system. All of it is ego-driven. Whatever person you listen to, no matter what side of the aisle they are on, if they need attention, if they need to be right, if they need to villainize others, if they need to play the hero or the rescuer, then they are operating in an ego role. True servant leadership that lays down its life for all persons on all sides of an issue. Yes, true servant leadership is like that of the Christ who washed the feet of his followers. Not one who needs to be put on a pedestal or revered, not one who needs to justify, argue, defend, or explain their position, but they live the principles in which they believe in most. Yes?
Is this the direction that we're going in on Earth? That a civilization that has true leaders?
Well, we are sharing this because we want you to create it. We want everyone listening within the sound of our voice, and even any millions more, give this vessel a mic for millions and millions, and we will continue to share that, yes, if you want to create this humanity, human family that we are speaking to, you most certainly can create leaders that are loving, servant leaders that care for all persons with open hearts and open borders to the entire human family. And so why are we sharing this message? Because we want to gather your attention to this message so that we can plant a seed of a thought in your mind that this is possible. For if we can plant the seed of the thought in the mind of millions of people on earth that this is possible, then we can create it. And this is why we are here. Yes? This vessel wants to be an infinite creator being who creates real peace on earth that is beyond a patronizing thing that is said in a meme, but that is a reality. Now we're going to tell you how it's done. We know you would like to hear this. Yes?
Yes.
How it is done. If everyone on the planet right now, in this now moment, loved completely, thoroughly the one in front of them, refused to judge them, and fully loved and accepted them unconditionally in this now moment, the entire planet would be instantly vibrationally transformed and transmuted into the new earth. Would you agree?
I would agree.
And we would also say this is the second way in which this can come into being. It is this: if every child on the planet had an enlightened, wise, and loving parent who loved them completely, through and through unconditionally and allowed them to be who they really are without manipulating or controlling them in any such manner, the world also would be instantly transformed, because every woe of humanity, every dysfunction, every unconsciousness, every unkindness, every hurt, every difficulty has stemmed at one point from a child who was not loved, unconditionally. Would you agree?
I would agree.
These are the two offerings that we give in order to create this beautiful reality in which, yes, there are true, loving, servant leaders, a global human family with open hearts and open borders between all people.
How powerful is it for one human to visualize the earth that they would like to see?
Mm. Well, any human that so desires can increase and expand their auric field to encompass their home, to encompass their workplace, to encompass their city, their state, their nation, the entire globe. And yes, any one human being can even expand their consciousness out into the cosmos to meet beautiful angels and ETs such as ourselves. And so any one human being can, in their enlightened state, counteract the negativity of thousands, tens of thousands, even a million souls if they so choose. And this is why assisting others in their awakening and enlightenment process is of the paramount importance to us, because another 10, only 10 enlightened persons on the planet tonight would vastly impact the entire globe and its frequency.
You know, I am so impressed, particularly the last several years. We're getting so much off-planet help here on Earth, which I'm so grateful for. Why do you guys spend your time working with humans? And what do you think about it? What do you think about us in this whole situation? I'm really curious about that.
Yes, well, we can tell you why we work with this vessel, and it will help you understand why ETs and angels are working with other persons such as yourselves. Yes, we are the future self of this soul. We are her future self. Yes. And also her past selves as well. And so when we visit her and work with her and speak through her, what we are doing is we are alleviating her suffering, and we are accelerating her journey towards who and what she is going to be, which is us, which is who we are in the future, these highly evolved angelic beings in the higher dimensions. And so many and most, we will say, of the persons out there channeling various ETs and angelic beings are channeling their future selves. And so we obviously have a vested interest in you because you are us and we are you. Just as a parent loves to share with their young child is an aspect of themselves. Wouldn't you agree? Yes?
Yes.
They look at the child and they see their own face and their own character traits and their own personality and their own heart and so on. And so the parent shares messages with the child and teaching with the child because they don't want the child to suffer. They want the child to be happy. And this is why we share with all of you. We want you to learn vicariously through what we say so that you can have shortcuts into your enlightened state. And anyone can connect with their higher self in the same manner in which we are connecting with this vessel. And we continually share with her secrets and strategies to help persons do this, because she understands what a gift it has been to her life, and she wants you to experience that as well.
Yeah. Wonder, she's such a delightful woman. Okay, last question, I think. You mentioned angels and ETs. For us here on Earth, can you describe the difference?
Yes, we can say that we generally use these terms very interchangeably. So understand that a person with more religious conditioning will tend to think of us as angels, and those with more a secular conditioning will tend to think of us as ETs. But basically, what we are speaking of souls that are highly evolved, who are primarily in light body form or very transparent ethereal body forms, yes, that live off-world. In many different myriads of combinations of places or experiences. And so angels and ETs, these terms for us are very interchangeable.
So are humans on their way to that enlightenment state?
Absolutely. And we speak many times this verse of the Christ, a saying of the Christ. He said, "You are sons and daughters of God, and you are like the angels." Now, when this vessel dug into the original linguistics of this phrase, here is what this means. The Christ said, "You are children of God just as the angels are children of God." All of you understand that angels emanate from God, yes, that they are the children of God. They are an aspect of divinity, of source. So what Jesus was literally saying is, you are angels. You are children of God just like the angels, and you are evolving back into your angelic state. And so understand that each and every one of you are in the process of evolving into your new light body, angelic form. And one day you will not live in such a heavy, dense physical body, because you will live in your angelic body, because you will have evolved into in your emotional and mental state into a place in which you can no longer tolerate the density of earth and of an earthly body.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you, Judith, so much. Can we talk to Angie now?
Yes.
Hey, how are you? That was
Great.
beautiful. I want to ask you, just on a personal level, how does that feel physically, energetically? Is it just the most delicious feeling, like warm honey?
Yeah, it's very blissful. I feel very kind of light and kind of high, like I'm maybe at the top of a mountain or something. It's a very elevated feeling. It feels like being inside of a really nice dream. I can hear everything that's being said. I don't usually remember all the details of it, but I have a sense of it. And,
Yeah,
and I feel really grateful just to kind of be a witness to it. Yeah.
yeah. Do you think that it has raised your own personal vibration just because you're becoming so attuned to that level?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with Dr. Hawkins' work. He spent decades researching consciousness and the levels of consciousness and assigning numeric value to it. 0 being the level of suicidal, homicidal rage, and 1,000 being the level of Christ and the Buddha, and so on. And I had been privy to his work for many years, and so I learned how to calibrate the levels of consciousness of teachings I listen to and books that I read and so on, and to calibrate my own level of consciousness. So when I'm channeling, I will typically go from, like, my normal kind of everyday level of consciousness is around 599, and when I channel, I can go up as high as in the 850s. So and then I'll kind of gradually come back down to my set point. So to answer your question in a real common sense way, we all have kind of like a set point of our level of consciousness, kind of like our set point on the thermostat. Maybe we set it at 70 or 68, whatever we like, whatever we prefer. And so no matter what's going on in our environment, our situations, we'll tend to gravitate back to that set point of our level of consciousness. Well, when we channel angels and other higher dimensional beings, it changes our set point, and over time, it will eventually elevate our set point pretty dramatically.
Yeah. So can you feel a difference just energetically? I know some days I can feel heavy and down and low energy. Can you feel a difference in your just daily energy level since you started channeling?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I do have challenges too. I mean, sometimes I have dark entities and things that come around that I'm kind of work with, and also because of the kind of work I do, I'm entangling myself intentionally with people with their permission. And so sometimes I feel their sadness or pain or whatever's going on. But yeah, for sure, it gives you enormous amount of energy. And I've had times where I've had a cold or something and been sick, and when I channel, I'll just immediately feel better. Yeah, and
What a wonderful thing. Yeah.
yeah. It's great like that.
Oh gosh, this has just been really wonderful, so fascinating. How can we find out more about you?
Sure. Well, we're at thejudahchannel.com. And we have a start here button. You can see all kinds of free offerings and different things that we're doing at the Judah channel. We have a really thriving YouTube family on the Judah channel, and we have free live streams every week. We have Telegram groups where you can get to meet people all over the world that are in the Judah family and make friends. We have watch parties where people get together in their hometowns and watch the channels together. We've got a beautiful course called the True You Accelerator, and it helps you to go from wherever you are now in life, even if you're in the most dire straits in your emotional thought life, all the way to the door of enlightenment. It's a very intensive and thorough course. And we also have a Judah Treats program, which is one of my favorites. It's an audio treatment where we help people clear out subconscious beliefs with Judah's help in any area where you're feeling stuck or hindered or hung up in your awakening process.
Oh, Angie, you've built such a beautiful community. Thank you for all that you do, really.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
I will have everything listed in the description box down below, her YouTube channel, and everything's super easy to find. I hope you'll come back and see us.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
I would love that too. This has been wonderful. Thank you again for
Thank
joining
you.
us. Yeah, and thank you everyone for watching. Bye now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Coming up next, this is a good one, or you might really like this one too. Either one of them could be perfect for you. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe.